William Rogers for the defense. May it please the court. Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. Ms. Bellani was right. In some ways, this came down to coincidences. But members of the jury, the truth value to this case is simply it came down to experience. Now we'll talk about those coincidences, but let's start from the beginning. Because in October of 2014, the Midlands Gambling Commission announced that they would be accepting proposals for a new casino in the state of Midlands. Now, the Gambling Commission had roughly 7 months to review these proposals and choose their candidate. In the end, it came down to 2 competitors, but only one had relevant, significant business experience. That person was Avery Bancroft. Avery Bancroft is the owner and CEO of the Black Bear Casino, an established business and casino in the state of Midlands. Now, we heard a lot today about Miss Bancroft and what she said, and Mr. Covington and what he said. But members of the jury, as you deliberate this evidence that you heard today, I want you to keep one thing clear. What Avery Bancroft wanted and what Chase Covington wanted. See, it's Chase Covington, the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, who's on trial today, not Avery Bancroft. It doesn't matter what Avery Bancroft wanted. Doesn't matter what Avery Bancroft did. It only matters what Chase Covington wanted and what Chase Covington did. Now, as the prosecution, they had the sole burden of proof in today's case. They had to come before you and prove their burden, which is made up of 3 elements, beyond a reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, when I say reasonable doubt, based on common sense and rational thinking, if you found that there's any doubt that it is not concrete in your mind that Mr. Covington accepted a bribe, then you can't find with the state. Now, these 3 elements I mentioned that they had to prove, these aren't so simple. The first being that Chase Covington is a public official. Now, members of the jury, to be clear, that is something we do not contest. We have heard throughout today's trial that Mr. Covington is the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, and that puts him in a public official position. But the other 2 elements, they were not able to prove. See, they had to prove that Mr. Covington received something of value in exchange for his vote. And third and lastly, that Mr. Covington had the intent to be persuaded for something like his vote. Let's talk about the prosecution's witnesses that they brought forth to you today. Now, first, they called Mr. Mickey Keenan. He's under an alias as his investigation is still ongoing through this trial. And they used this diagram. And they labeled it the proposal, the price, and the payoff. Members of the jury, before we go through this, let's establish one thing. Who throughout today's trial could tell you that there was an actual payoff between Chase Covington and Avery Bancroft? Because from all the 6 witnesses that were brought forth to you today, none of them could tell you that there was an exchange. So why did they label this a payoff? Mr. Del Sesto, the bellhop at the Black Bear Casino, was standing far away near a fountain in the VIP room. And he sees Covington leave the casino with a briefcase. Members of the jury, Mr. Del Sesto couldn't actually tell you the time frame for anything that day. He came up today and he told you about how he only had roughly 20 minutes to 30 minutes of sleep. That he was walking around like a zombie. He was even bumped off his feet at one point. Members of the jury, a witness standing far away from a table where the prosecution claims a bribe was happening told you that they saw him leave with a nearly identical briefcase to the one that Miss Bancroft had? Members of the jury, that's reasonable doubt. Let's talk about a witness that was actually at that table, Mr. Ali Thomas. And Mr. Ali Thomas came before you today. And talked about the day of the 16th of April, 2015, where prosecution alleges the bribe took place. He told you that when Miss Avery Bancroft came in, she sat down at this seat. And when Mr. Covington came in, he sat down at this seat, leaving a seat in between them, approximately around roughly 2 meters. Now, they both set their briefcases under the table, under their chairs, on either side of them. Members of the jury, Mr. Ali Thomas told you today that it would be impossible for them to reach, because as a trained dealer in an established VIP room, he would be able to see any awkward movement. That is what he's trained to do. That's a fact. Now, he said that he would have to see some sort of ninja move made by Mr. Covington or Avery Bancroft to actually reach for each other's briefcases. Let's talk about this briefcase. This briefcase had fingerprints from both Avery Bancroft and Chase Covington on it. Now, members of the jury, correct me if I'm wrong, how am I supposed to open this briefcase if I don't even touch the latches that unlock it? Furthermore, if I had to open it to get that money out at this time, how would I do that without someone seeing me? How would I exchange this cash? Members of the jury, no one could actually tell you what was inside these briefcases, except for Mr. Covington himself. Mr. Covington came forth to you. Mr. Covington talked about what actually happened. They brought forth a bank statement. This bank statement had a deposit for $155,000, a deposit for $200,000. This $200,000 is what the prosecution is alleging is the money from the bribe. Members of the jury, when they brought forth a napkin that was said to be the deal of the bribe, this says $250,000. Now they told you that we didn't have a full case that made sense. But members of the jury, where's the $250,000 that they're alleging was the bribe? I only saw $200,000 on that bank statement, with a previous assertion of $155,000. Mr. Covington came before and he told you about his Ferrari that his grandfather left for him. This Ferrari was roughly $355,000 in value. He put the first payment in on the 6th, and the second payment in on the 17th. Being the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, he doesn't have all the time in the world. And he told you that he put it in as soon as he could. Now, these coincidences are likely. Members of the jury, these coincidences happen because that's how the prosecution wants it to look. They're making up what they can to fit this together. Because members of the jury, in reality, it simply came down to experience. The prosecution couldn't show you Avery Bancroft's or Chase Covington's intent to be influenced. They couldn't show you that an exchange even happened. Members of the jury, that is reasonable doubt. That's why I asked you to find Mr. Covington not guilty for a crime that is pieced together by an overzealous state. Thank you.
Rebuttal.
Amen.
May I begin?
Amen.
Mr. Rogers just told you that none of the witnesses who took that stand today saw an exchange. And that makes sense. Because when you agree to commit bribery, you don't sign a contract. When you put a price on how much your vote costs, you don't get that on tape. And when you take a payoff, you certainly don't do it over a wire transfer. You use a briefcase. This case was about a proposal, a price, and a payoff. Find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Any?
There is no rebuttal to